Welcome back to the Autoblog Podcast. I'm Greg Migliore. We have a great show for you today. This is the podcast where we are going to talk about the long-awaited first drive of the Ford F-150 Lightning. To do that, we have our senior editor for all things green, John Snyder. You heard his dispatch from San Antonio last week. He is back, and he has driven the truck. Welcome, John.
Thanks. I'm excited to talk about it. I was really eager to drive this truck, especially after getting a ride in it at Motorbella earlier, last fall. So it was a pretty good truck.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. It was a good truck. So you're going to want to stick around and listen to all of John's impressions of that. We've got kind of a mixed bag here, a grab bag of stuff through the podcast. I drove the Polestar 1. This is the electric plug-in hybrid Grand Touring Polestar. It was the first one that kicked off the range, up to 619 horsepower. It's pretty wild. I took it to Starbucks this morning. We may talk about it more in the coming weeks as I get, run some more miles behind the wheel of it. But we'll talk about that. And then I have a electric lawnmower review that we're going to talk about just for a little bit. We'll run through some news. Ford and Rivian, some stuff going on there. The stock, it's pretty wild. We're going to take a look back at the Miami F1. I really enjoyed that race, not just because it was a decent race, but just seeing a Miami Grand Prix I thought was awesome. Awesome for F1, awesome for the US. We also have some news on the Dodge Hornet. So let's jump right into the F-150 Lightning. Really big deal truck. We've been talking about this for a long time. It's here. You got to drive it. Just initial driving impressions, John.
Well, I mean, it's really something that you can't go wrong here. It's an F-150, right? So America's best-selling vehicle, the Ford F-Series. And then it's got an electric powertrain, all-electric powertrain, which, as Ford has proven with the Mach-E, can be mega fun. It's got standard four-wheel drive through 2 electric motors, and it's also super powerful. There are 2 batteries. There's a standard range battery, 452 horsepower, 775 pound-feet of torque. Extended range battery, which offers up to 320 miles. 580 horsepower, and again 775 pound-feet of torque. So you're getting an F-150. You sit in it, it feels just like an F-150. It's going to be very familiar to consumers moving from the gas or diesel-powered F-150s into this electric one. It's going to feel very, very familiar. But then, it's got the electric powertrain, tons of power, very feature-rich as you go up the trim level. There's Blue Cruise, still decent towing and hauling. It can tow up to 10,000 pounds. Just all around a really great truck. And going down the road. So I pulled out. We started in San Antonio, downtown San Antonio, and we pull out of this sort of plaza, and we're creeping through the city streets, and it's this big monster truck. The one I was riding in had 20-inch wheels and all that, so it would normally feel huge on the road, but this is Texas, where everything's a truck, and a lot of them very, very big trucks. So it fit right in. But it, you sort of notice that, it drives just like an EV. It's very familiar, very direct and linear, lots of low end torque. Then you get on the highway and you feel the ride, the suspension. It's got a independent rear suspension. But you feel the ride. It's a truck-like ride. It sort of moves around, bounces a little bit. It's not the crashy sort of truck ride. It's more of the premium sort of bouncy sort of truck ride. But still, decent amount of movement, some forgiveness there, because later we'd go off road in it. We need that forgiveness in the suspension. And then, you hit Blue Cruise, and then you can take your hands off the wheel. That works pretty well. And then, driving it on some of the more rural highways, with out of traffic, you can sort of open it up a little bit. There's really, at least in the extended range version, there's really no instance where you need to put the pedal all the way to the floor. It's just excess. There's just so much power all over the place that you just give it a little bit of shove from your right foot and it just goes. It just takes off. Ford quotes the extended range battery will do 0 to 60 in about 4.5 seconds, mid 4 second range, where the standard range will do it in 5, which is still quite quick. So you're not really giving up a whole lot by going electric. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to tow as much as a diesel dually or something, and those longer trips where you might be going beyond the range of the vehicle, you're going to have to find a charger. Ford's working with its partners to make sure there are chargers up and running that can support the Lightning owners. Because that's the biggest thing. Most people charge at home. 80% of the energy that's put into EVs is done at home. Yet the tension, the anxiety, the biggest hurdle, I think, for EV consumers, would-be EV buyers, is range and charging. So Ford understands that, even though we all want to say, look, you're just going to charge it at home most of the time. They understand that that's a barrier to selling them. So they're out there sending fleets out, testing chargers all over the country to make sure they work, and working with Electrify America and different companies to expand their network. But then there's all sorts of other stuff that this truck does. It's got zone lighting, and it's got tons of plugs. It's got a giant frunk with plugs in it. Has the ability, if you have the charger, there's a charging station that comes with the extended range battery for your home. If you have that charger, you can also buy it if you have the standard range battery. And then there's a home integration system that's like $3,500 or something like that. You can use this truck as backup power for your home if you lose power, and it can power a house using 30 kilowatt hours a day for 3 days. And if you're conserving energy, Ford says up to 10 days. Your mileage may vary, but having that ability to, I mean, we saw what happened in Texas when they were shipping out the hybrid F-150s with Pro Power on board to power various things. This thing can power your whole house, which is pretty amazing. But yeah, there's just so many different features in it. It's great to drive. Really capable off road. It's got a rear locking differential. It's got good ground clearance, full underbody protection. Not having to shift gears or deal with a turbocharger makes it very easy to modulate the amount of throttle and torque to get over that next rock without gunning it past it once you're over it. Just very, very nice all around. And yeah, going to be very familiar to people who are already familiar with the F-150. And I think that a lot of owners will fall in love with all the different benefits that you get with it too.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting parts of Ford's strategy is they made the Lightning look very much like essentially the F-150. It's an F-150 that happens to be electrified, that is obviously purposefully electrified, which is a bit different when you look at Chevy's approach with the electric Silverado. It has a different design sort of ethos, and it seems like they're differentiating it a little bit, at least as far as just kind of the marketing and, of course, the design. So I think both approaches can work. I think in the case of Ford, it makes a lot of sense because this is really who they are as a company. Going back to the days of the Model T, when they just here's the Model T. It could be a truck if you rip out the back. It only comes in one color that was black for years and years. It was even they made a tractor variant of it. That was how they did business then, and you still see that now. So I think that's kind of an interesting approach. I've seen a few of them on the roads. I guess they're prototypes. I think they look good. Sometimes I have to do a double take though, because it's is that a Lightning or what is that? Because, the lighting up front is relatively similar to the rest of the F-150 line.
It really is. It looks very much like a regular F-150. You look closely though, you can, if you familiarize yourself with the grills, you can sort of tell there, it's got the sort of closed off grill. It's got the badging with the sort of electric blue outline that looks really cool in person. But that's pretty subtle otherwise. And yeah, you wouldn't necessarily know it unless you stop and took a look around and notice the charging door on the front of it and things like that. There are little details that sort of give it away, but otherwise it's very familiar. And inside it's again just like an F-150, except the higher trims get that giant 15.5 I think inch portrait oriented infotainment touchscreen, like the one in the Mach-E, and that is set up similarly with the menus and lots of different customizable things in there. Thankfully, Ford gave it one pedal driving. You can turn it on through a menu, things like that. You can turn the locking diff on and off through the menu. There's 4 drive modes in the menu. There's normal, sport, tow haul, and off-road. Off-road automatically turns the locker on, but you can disengage it if you want to turn it off. The truck automatically comes with a mobile charger that is capable of both level 1 and level 2, 240 volt charging, which is pretty great. So if you don't get the extended battery and don't get that home charger, that wall charger, or don't want to bother with one, or you just want to have a really nice charger to carry around with you, it comes with that. And that charger can also be used if you have the 9.6 kilowatt Pro Power on board with the extra plugs. There's a 240 volt outlet in the bed of the truck that you can plug an adapter into, plug your mobile charger into, and then charge another EV with your Lightning. Say your buddy in whatever, it doesn't matter what brand of EV. They run out of electricity on the side of the highway and can't get to the next charging station. You can pull up in your Lightning and save the day. And there's just so many little features like that, including little features that Ford has been adding to its standard F-150s, like that fold down shifter with the fold out workspace, so you can do work right there in your truck. You've got a nice little spot to plug in your computer or eat lunch or whatever. The plugs in the bed. This has that gigantic frunk, which I'm not particularly impressed with EV frunks in general, especially when the car has enclosed cargo space in the rear. With a pickup truck, it makes sense You might want to store something not in the passenger compartment, but want it to be protected from the elements or from maybe thieves. That frunk is big and offers a lot of space to protect stuff in there, and you can charge stuff in there too while you're driving. It's got, if you get the one with the plugs up front. So just endless features available, and there's just so much you can do with it. You can do all your old truck stuff, plus you can throw the world's greatest tailgate party, plugging in multiple appliances, and you can plug in TVs and a sound system, and electric. They had electric smoker at the the hub where we were, our little home base from where we were driving from. They had a basketball, one of those arcade basketball games hooked up to it. They had an electric fridge freezer cooler hooked up to it. They had a big wall of amps, speakers, pumping music, and and a TV. And so you can just throw a huge party. It'd be great for camping. Obviously, they know that these are going to be used in the field. There's a fleet version of the Pro trim, the base trim, and that will allow people to run power tools off of it, which is great if you're somewhere, a construction site that maybe doesn't have plugs available. You've got your truck, and you've got a ton of energy to use, and so you can power stuff for a long time and still make it home.
Very cool. I think Ford's really played up the this is like the revolutionary vehicle, almost more so than the Mach-E, and I actually agree with that, because the Mach-E is a Mustang. It's a crossover. It probably fits the needs of a wide swath of people. It's still a Mustang, and I think that's purposeful. But when you think of just the sheer volume, the sheer number of people who buy F-150s, you're going right at a consumer base that may not be super into electric vehicles, but now they're like sort of, sacred cow, their favorite thing offers you an electric option. I feel like you're going to like walk into your showroom thinking, okay, it's been 15, 20 years, time for my new F-150, because that's a lot of times how these, like truck buyers work, is they're super loyal. They maybe aren't even selling their old one. They're just like, we need the new one, at this point. And they're like, well, wow, what's this Lightning thing? And I mean, that's where you're going to like start to convert sort of the masses into saying, hey, an electric vehicle can work for you. And I think that it's going to be really fascinating to watch that. I also think you could get some new buyers in. Like, I don't really need an electric. Well, I would like an electric vehicle, let me put it that way, but I don't really need a full-size truck. I just, for my yearly mulch hauling, I actually had the mulch delivered last year because it was easier. I don't really need a full-size truck. Most people don't, but, Ford's being very aggressive with the pricing on this, and it's an electric vehicle that could do all of these things. It's really a like cliched Swiss Army knife, to use that cliche, if you will. And, the pricing is very, very solid. It's like aggressive even. If you want to get into the electric vehicle space, I can't believe I'm saying this, but the F-150 Lightning is a great gateway to it. So I think that's a really sound strategy.
With the base price of a little over $40,000 for the Pro, and you're already getting, over 400 horsepower and over 200 miles of driving, 230 miles of range, and 452 horsepower, 775 pound-feet of torque at that range. 5 seconds 0 to 60. This is the base truck.
I mean, that's what you need. That's more than you need right there.
Yeah, it's really impressive. And I think a lot of customers will be existing F-150 customers. But like you said, it's one of those things, you might not need it, but if you had it, you'd you'd probably use those features. We didn't. It's arguable whether or not we needed a 3-row SUV for our family. Our extreme use case that we tested with was putting a week's worth of stuff in it and 2 kids and 2 dogs and going on a road trip like that. And once we figured out we were able to do that, now we do that sort of thing all the time. We fill it full of stuff and just go do stuff with everyone in our family, and all the stuff we need. Pack and play, stroller, blah, blah, blah. When you have that stuff at your fingertips, it really sort of unlocks a sense of adventure. And I think that the F-150 and its capabilities, it's towing, its storage, its ability to power all these things, if you have that available, why not make the most of it? It's a life hack. You're unlocking, more adventures and more experiences through your vehicle, which is pretty great.
Wow, I think that's your tagline for the next Palisade update we do is unlocking your life, so to speak.
Yeah.
Pretty high praise. Any final thoughts on the Lightning?
There's so much more to review. There's so much more to dive into that you just can't really do over 2 days driving the vehicle. There's so many more. I towed with it a little bit, but I didn't hook up the trailer. There's the onboard scales and things like that. There's all these different features that it will take. You'd have to have a long-termer to really get to know all of them. There's just so much there. So there's a lot of opportunity for getting to know the truck better, and I hope we get some more time in it in the near future, because there's just so much more I want to do with it.
This is right up there with the Ioniq 5 with vehicles I'm super excited to drive this year. So let's, what was the best thing you ate in San Antonio? I'm curious. Got to add a little bit of flavor to this meeting, or drank, I guess.
Let's see. I actually had really good. Like I said, they had the electric smoker plugged into the truck, and so I had these smoked vegetables with this fresh chimichurri sauce that they whipped up right there. And that was incredible. I need to eat more chimichurri.
Sounds pretty good. Maybe not the most obvious thing you would expect from San Antonio, but hey, I mean, that's
no. They were grilling up all sorts of meat and stuff, and
sounds good.
I wasn't partaking.
Sounds good. Cool. So let's stay in the electric situation here, the electric game. The Polestar 1, we've both driven it. You drove it when it was more of like a new thing. I am driving what I can only sort of describe it as almost like a victory lap for Polestar. Yeah. It may even be a 21 model. I haven't looked that close at the spec sheet yet. This is the Polestar 1, the original one that launched the line. It's the coupe, the Grand Tourer, 619 horsepower. It's a plug-in hybrid, so there's a little bit of irony that they launched their electric line with a plug-in hybrid, but hey, that's fine. It is. I think it's a beautiful car. I went to Starbucks this morning to get some coffee, and multiple people were looking at me. One guy put down his window and was like, "Well, that's gorgeous. What is that?" He really liked the color. It really has presence. It's definitely right in my my zone as far as sports cars. Miata's great. I love the Miata. I love the Fiat 124 Spider. I've often thought a Alpha Spider would be cool, but I also like Grand Tourers. You get a little bit of a back seat, the long hood, the short deck, just the beautiful roof lines. You could really make a design presence, the presence of a brand felt with a Grand Tourer. Yeah. And this one really has it. So initial impressions are that, yeah, I mean, they created an icon. It's a very limited edition car. They only sold, I think, like 1,500 of them in the US. So like not that many. It's super rare. Yeah, man, I just enjoying it so far. It's one of those things where I'm literally going to get 24 hours with it. It arrived late last night. I had already sort of signed out of work. I think it's leaving tomorrow morning. So like maybe not quite 48. I'm going to drive it as much as I can though. It's wild.
It is. It's super powerful, super sporty, and it looks the business too. I love the proportions on it.
Mm-hmm.
There's some neat little things with it. I don't know. The one I had, you open up the trunk and you can see a lot of the, there's a glass panel and you can see a lot of the electronics through that glass panel at the back of the trunk. It's pretty cool. I think they were even labeled all these orange cables. And then there's things like the one I had the bright gold seat belts and the crystal shifter, things like that. There are a lot of things about the Polestar one that feel very Volvo too.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the infotainment and the ignition knob and drive modes and things like that feel very Volvo. But you wouldn't know it looking at it from the exterior. It looks very much its own thing. And it's very fast. I think it was like 0 to 64 seconds.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's 619 horsepower, 737 pound-feet of torque is just a ton in a car like that. I mean, a little bit less than that in the gigantic F-150 felt incredibly quick. And this thing is even quicker. I noticed, if I recall correctly, that when you do go in EV mode, I think they call it pure mode, that it did feel significantly slower. But I did appreciate being able to do some of my driving electric only, spend less time at the gas station. But yeah, this is a plug-in hybrid that's geared more toward performance than economy. I think that's fine. That's what they set out to do with this and make a statement and sort of set the tone for the brand going forward. And I think they did a good job with it.
I liked actually some of the like Volvo familiarity, if you will. Yeah. It it's easier to just jump in right off the bat and just make sense of things. I mean, hey, I always like Orifer's Crystal too for shifters. That's great. I thought the driving modes where you could do that guy at one point was doing all-wheel drive, which is one you could queue up, or you can do. There's another one where you are only going rear wheel. Which is one of the sportier settings. But driving through one of these, like this twisty kind of subdivision kind of near my house, I was like, this is pretty awesome. I haven't driven an all-wheel drive sports car like this, and I couldn't tell you when. So that was kind of a neat dynamic. The wires in the back were wild. The guy who dropped it back opened the trunk just to that's how they do it. They check to make sure everything's where it should be. And my son is like, Dad, why are there wires in the back of that car? And I kind of did a double take too. Like it looks like a fuse box, but
it almost looks like the DeLorean from Back to the Future. With it looks like should those be exposed, but they're behind safety glass. But it looks it catches your eye and catches you off guard for sure.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. Yeah, this one has the yellow seat belts too, the sort of like perforated leather design elements in the seats. It may be the same car you drove, actually.
It's possible.
But I'm having fun with it. Steering is really good. It may be one of the best handling Polestar / Volvos I have ever driven, which would make sense because I didn't drive the P1800 or anything. I haven't driven their take on the sports car segment. So this is pretty cool, I think. And I think it was a good way too to sort of kick off Polestar is almost a premium luxury brand of Volvo. And for the first try, I think that's fine. I think sometimes we I mean, I drove a Maserati last week with Stellantis, like stuff inside, knobs and buttons and switches.
Uh-huh.
And I even found myself thinking, why didn't they use the infotainment that they use in the Ram? You know, because whatever this is, it's not as good.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that's okay when you do that. And Polestar is sort of like the luxury brand for Volvo. You know, I think like Cadillac is to Chevy and Lexus is to Toyota. And, you know, I think it's a very solid sports car. I think this is going to be one of those that's going to get maybe mythical status. You know, this is like a future Pebble Beach car because it's so rare. It's so beautiful. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting at least a couple more drives into it. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the cars that I feel fortunate to have had the opportunity to drive it, because it is, you know, such a rare opportunity. So I'm glad you're getting some drive time in it too. It's a treat.
It is, and it's so much different than like the Polestar 2, which we both have driven. You know, it's like not just in like you know, meaning and function and like the electric propulsion systems, but I mean, it's just so high-end luxury. Like this is like a, you know, SL-AMG fighter or something, or Audi R8 competitor as far as price and performance. And then the Polestar 2 is just like with the one motor setup, that's a relatively affordable, like compact sedan, you know? So you know, Polestar, I think, is definitely one of the more interesting stories in the electric vehicle segment.
Yeah, it definitely is.
All right, so let's transition. I didn't mean for this to be all electric, but I wrote
Fine with me.
Yeah, it's true. Might as well do this with the green editor, right? But I tested, I guess, an Ego self-propelled lawnmower. I actually... Spoiler alert, this is my entry in our Father's Day gift guide, which it's going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And I just kind of got carried away and did a little bit of a review, sort of one of our like commerce style posts. So that should be up now if you're listening to this. And I have been impressed. I did a lot of like research as far as like what the right electric lawnmower might be for me. And I landed on this one. It was not cheap. But I also like lawnmowers aren't cheap. And I decided whether it was going to be 50, $100, go for the one like I wanted. And, you know, hopefully don't have to get another lawnmower for 10 years at least. This is my first electric one. So there were some like things I was learning, that's a good thing. This is to be specific, it's the Ego Power Plus self-propelled lawnmower LM2102SP. The name rolls off the tongue.
Yes.
That one. If the reason I say like that specific is if you just search for like an Ego Power Plus lawnmower, there's a lot of them. They're very similar. I landed on this one because it was actually the second best pick on the Wirecutter. I looked around at all the different reviewed sites. And this one was almost always on the list. If it wasn't at the top, it was on there. And it's the same as the number one Wirecutter pick. Let me put it that way. It's just you don't get some of the bells and whistles. In my article, I compared it to like an Escalade versus a Yukon. Like, you know, it's especially like we are talking about a lawnmower here, right? It's still work. It's still manual labor. After cutting the grass a few times with it, I was like always excited to do that, but also kind of like, well, still cutting the grass. It's summer. It's hot out. It's not like it made this like fun. It just made it a little less of a chore. Yeah. But I give this one a very positive remark. It's a 21 incher. So you could definitely cut a good deal of grass with it. Mine has the 56 volt lithium ion battery. I didn't know this when I was buying it, but I'm glad I did this. Mine has the 7.5 amp hour battery. So that gives you like a little bit more of like runtime, and it charges quicker. I also didn't realize I went with the rapid charger, which again, I'm glad I did. I just throw the battery on there and boom, it's charged. So I'm liking this. You know, it was basically this or maybe go back to the yard service. I did that for a few years. I've been using like gasoline lawnmowers since I was like 10 or 12. Like I remember cutting my grandmother's grass at a very young age. Like, you know, there was no problem. It's like, you're a kid, you know, you're a man, get out there and cut the grass. So there was no ease into it. That's for sure. I was definitely using lawnmowers far before I was driving. So that was pretty old school, but I like
electric lawnmowers. I had one at my old house. I had a Cobalt, and you know, it's quiet. It's way easier on the ears. Like I already, you know, my hearing is declining. Too many concerts and gun ranges as a kid. But yeah, it's a lot easier on the ears. It's way better for the environment. Those motors in a lot of lawn equipment just spew out fumes. There's no real filtration. And you sort of don't realize, because it's just one little mower. What's it going to do? But you know, everyone is using something like that. You know, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of lawnmowers just, you know, within, you know, a small square mileage of you. And so that adds up quite a bit, especially when they're being used, you know, every week during the summer. I definitely getting the right battery is important. I had two smaller batteries. I had a couple other tools. I had a weed whacker and a leaf blower that used the same batteries. So I would swap out these smaller batteries. And then I got a bigger battery, and I could do the whole lawn and not have to swap out for a different battery. I didn't have a rapid charger, but which, you know, would have been similar. Just go take a lemonade break and come back out and finish it up. But does it have a cup holder? Does yours have a cup holder attachment?
It does not, but it has two lights. I think they may even be LEDs.
Oh, wow.
They're pretty small. My goal was actually, like, we both have young kids. You get up early on weekends most of the time. The question is how early?
Yeah.
So I was thinking, like, well, if, you know, sleeping in on Saturday might be 7:30, 8 o'clock. I could be cutting the grass at like 8 o'clock. And in the summer, it's of course light, but also, you know, maybe I'll do crazy things like cut the grass at like start at 8 o'clock in July, because you got another hour plus of light through twilights. So I'm going to try out those headlights, I think. They look cosmetic, to be honest, but they work. So we'll see.
And with an electric mower, you can do it like early morning and not bug your neighbors, which is great.
It sounds like a low-level hairdryer is what I would put it. It's not totally silent. Like the Polestar is quieter than my lawnmower. Let me put it that way. I was a little surprised, to be perfectly honest. But it's also like you could start cutting at like 8 o'clock, I think, you know, and be fine. Whereas like a gas lawnmower, if you're the guy at like 7:57 Saturday morning and it's like pulling the cord and it fires up, like you're kind of that guy. You know, that's a little aggressive. With this, you could easily slide in at like 8 a.m.
Yeah, this won't wake the baby.
Right.
That's the important thing.
Yeah. How's your lawn cutting situation going this year?
We actually have a lawn service, and they're here as we speak.
Well, there you go.
We've gone back and forth about getting. We've got about an acre, so it would be a time commitment for me to do it, and I've lobbied to get a riding mower.
There you go.
Pass, but I think Kat thinks my time would be better spent doing other things, you know, and instead of just because I would probably just be out there all the time on that thing, riding it around.
It's a satisfying chore. Are there electric lawnmowers that I ride on? There probably are.
There are. They're prohibitively expensive.
I was going to say, that seems like supercar territory of lawnmowers.
But I think Ego even makes some. But
Yeah.
maybe someday when if prices ever come down, or if battery powered lawnmowers become more mainstream, that might be something. Especially once Wally's a little older and he can help out with the chores, maybe the time commitment thing on my part won't be as much of a problem for Kat. So
It's interesting. Last night I signed off work a little bit early, I guess 5 o'clock, if you will. And then my son went up and down the lawn with me in like a little Tonka truck. So he likes to cut the grass. So that's where you could kind of make it like a family chore. I'm like right on the edge. Like I have not a huge lawn, not as big as yours, but it's pretty big. Like we are out in the suburbs, and we back up to a park. So there's a bit of room here. And there's like sort of like peninsulas on the side. Like it takes a solid hour to cut. And I've been pleasantly surprised that the battery is more than up for it. I could even do sort of like cosmetic lower cuts, back and forth afterwards if I want to. But then there's like, okay, the edging, and then there's the leaf blowing. And I'm like right on that line. Like if I had a smaller yard, this would be like even better because you could just demolish it in like half an hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But I was even sort of telling my wife, like, when this thing goes, like I tend to keep lawnmowers for like generational, my last two were hand-me-downs. And I don't necessarily expect to buy another one. By the time this thing gives out, I feel like I may be of at an age where I'm like, I don't think I want to cut the grass anymore. I think, not that I plan being that old, but I feel like once you cross a certain age, you can cut the grass as long as you want. Whatever you want to do is fine with me. But I could see myself being like, you know what? It's a great workout for me right now. The time is like, I'm right with you there. It's so funny you bring that up because with like young kids, it's like, that's an hour that you're doing this when you could be doing something else. Yeah. But what kind of tipped me over is my son likes it as an activity. So we'll see how long that lasts. It might be like this year, and then I'm going to be cutting the grass throughout my 40s, sweating it out while he's like, yeah, that was cool when I was 4. Now I'm playing video games. But hopefully he keeps it up. Yeah. So yeah, that's the electric lawnmower part of the podcast. Let's run through some news. Why don't we bump up the Rivian Ford deal? We'll do electric, then we'll move on to some other things here. Okay. Rivian stock dropped. Looks like it was 14% because Ford did a big sell-off. Ford actually got really hammered in their most recent earnings report because of the Rivian stock had lost so much value. Ironically, I think it was last year, they had very rosy earnings because their holdings in Rivian, a little over 11%, did so well. I remember we were all kind of laughing like, boy, Ford did really well. And then, hey, they happened to own Rivian stock and it really pumped them up even more. So, I mean, this is really the stock market writ large here in so many ways, even when you're a big company. I mean, our headline here is 24.77, and they were 179.50 in November. I mean, that's not great, Bob. Let's put it that way.
But there is, they did get some good news recently. Rivian did earlier this month. They were awarded a $1.5 billion incentive package to build production in Georgia near Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge incentive for them to build a second plant. But man, with them bleeding, capital like that, it's hard to tell what's going to go on. I mean, they'd still have the Amazon investment, and they're starting to churn out those electric delivery trucks. So yeah, Ford divesting, it doesn't look great right now, especially as the stock market is kind of tumultuous at the time anyway.
Right.
So I don't know how much of it is the Ford news, how much of it is, the stock market in general. But yeah, they also haven't delivered a lot of vehicles yet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I wonder if, I don't have a crystal ball, so I'm not going to try and forecast what's going to happen with them, but I would not be completely surprised if they decided to do go the Bollinger route and just focus on commercial vehicles. I think that's maybe where there's more money to be made, and but I don't know. We'll see what happens. I still haven't gotten a chance to drive the R1T or the R1S, and they're, from what I've read from our own contributors, the R1T especially seems pretty great to drive. But and there's so much interest in Rivian. Everywhere I go, when people hear that I'm a car guy, they ask me about Rivian. They're so curious about Rivian. Should I order a Rivian? What do you think of Rivian? Have you driven the Rivian? Everyone wants to know about Rivian. So I think they at least have some brand recognition. So hopefully that goes a little bit in their favor to helping them right this ship. But yeah, it's just sort of a bloody week for them with the stock price. But hopefully, there's enough else on the balance sheet to sort of balance them out.
It's interesting Ford did this now because with the stock so low, I mean, unless it goes to zero, they almost might be better to hold and see if it might go back up, and then they could cash out. It's also a legacy of when there was a minute there, we thought Rivian and Ford were going to really partner on products. So strategically, Ford might just be like, whatever, we just took the hit, cut our losses, get out of Dodge and call it a day. So that appears to be what they're doing here. Strategy isn't there. The money isn't there. We probably should have sold in December, but who can look in their crystal ball?
I think they had to hold on to it. I think they were contractually obligated to hold on to it.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah. It's tough to have to get rid of it at this point. Let me put it that way, with the stock price so low.
Not great for either of them.
Right. It's interesting how the bloom has sort of come off the rose a little bit for Lucid and Rivian. If you flash back 6 months, November, these guys were racking up awards. Everybody was a buzz with them. I thought the R1T was a really good execution as far as a product. Yeah. There were some weird things about it. More like they almost overthought the quirky design, how much can we be like Apple or Tesla? But overall, there was nothing wrong with it. It was a very solid truck to drive. I drove it for a little bit, kind of out by you, actually. It was out in Ann Arbor and through the backwoods of Saline and Chelsea. Yeah. Good in all conditions. It's attractive. I almost feel and this is kind of how I feel about Bollinger, it's almost too nice to put into fleet use or the commercial segment. Not that that's not a viable, lucrative segment, but Ford and General Motors have been very strong in those segments for years. And they're just the watered down, very basic versions of their truck lines. And I look at the Bollinger and then the Rivian, the R1T, and it's it's pretty good designs. You're telling me this is just going to be my utility truck or the Parks and Rec truck. But it might not hurt to have them get in there, and these things can change. Fisker's back after we thought they were gone. Maybe Bollinger can they have a deal with Roush that was just announced to build their sort of commercial vehicle parts of it, the chassis, I think.
Nice.
So to be clear, Rivian and Lucid, they're both still standing, fighting. This is we've seen this go far more sideways, but it's been kind of a weird 6 months for those two.
And I think they've both shown that they can, get manufacturing built and get people on board with their program. This might just be a little dip. The economy is in a weird spot right now with inflation and everything. So, it might just be a little dip, and maybe they'll bounce right back. Maybe next week, we'll have good news, big good news for both of those companies. Who knows?
All right. So speaking of, we were talking about lawnmowers earlier. I discovered some bees in one of my garden beds. Not liking that. Fun. Yeah, I think they're hornets. But we can talk about the Dodge Hornet. That's a pretty lame transition, but Dodge Hornet, man. It's a kind of a rebadged Alfa Romeo Tonale.
Almost too much from what I can tell.
Yeah, that's maybe okay for Dodge. I don't know how good it is for Alfa. But
yeah. I mean, Dodge is going to get more recognition, at least here,
Yeah.
But I do like the idea of it. A smaller SUV with probably a plug-in hybrid powertrain. Yeah, it could be cool. But I don't know, the latest spy shots, and the latest info. It just, I don't know. In a world where there's much more exciting products coming out, even from Stellantis, this one just sort of falls a little flat for me. I like the name, but
you can have some fun writing about old Dodge darts whenever they reveal it.
Yeah, but maybe there's gonna be some neat feature or some really smart, I don't know, something it does that will bring me back around to it. But
cynically, I wouldn't bet on that, to be honest.
Yeah, right now I'm just not too into it. The Tonale, the 1.3 liter turbo plug-in hybrid, and then a 2 liter as well. I don't know. It just doesn't get me that fired up for something with the Hornet name.
I think it's, to me, in some ways, I think we've buried the lead. The fact that Dodge is getting this kind of like compact crossover is interesting.
Yeah, it's a good spot for their lineup. It's a hole to be filled for sure, which I think is good.
I'm a little surprised too, though, that to me, Dodge was like the muscle car brand outside of the Durango. I'm just a little surprised that Stellantis is sort of giving this product to Dodge. I mean, I think it's, for Dodge as a brand, it's a good thing. This could give them some volume, which they desperately need, because their plan beyond, Charger, Challenger, Durango is question mark, right?
Right.
So, I mean, if you have this, it's something. You're getting investment. It's not nothing. I kind of wonder if this might be a little bit like the Dodge Dart, though, which was a pretty good product. I thought reviewers were very milquetoast on it. But it was a nice, I think, approximate, representation of an American version of the Alfa Romeo Giulietta, which I actually got to drive that. I think it was Bosch brought some over, and they were Alphas, and they had diesel engines. And it was to promote the diesel tech back then, when we thought that was going to save everything. And, but again, that car just fell kind of short. It was pretty good, but pretty good wasn't going to take down the Honda Civic, at that point. So I tend to think that's where this is going to fall, even though, generally I like how Dodges look, and Dodge Alfa Romeos, I think there's some symmetry there, and I think they could look good. Plug-in hybrid would be great. It's definitely the, straight out of central casting engine lineup otherwise. So, we'll see.
You mentioned diesel. That would be something to get my interest in this in this vehicle. If they were able to put like a 2-liter turbo diesel in it, that'd be cool. It would have a little punch, a little character, and pretty good fuel economy and driving range. Although I suppose the plug-in hybrid powertrain sort of covers all that without all the nastiness associated with diesel these days.
Yeah, no, that's true. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, the Hornet, the Dart, Dodge has a lot of great names, but they tend to have some issues outside of, the Challenger and the Charger, making them all come together. So I don't know. To me, this kind of cuts both ways too, where Stellantis has all these brands, which means they have a lot of mouths to feed. So that means, hey, Dodge maybe gets a crossover they may not have gotten, but also, is it going to be any good or like more than just good enough? Hard to say.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about about F1. The race in Miami, I thought was pretty good. And Max Verstappen won. Cool. He's having a good year.
Yeah, he's a good kid, man.
Yeah. But I mean, to me, this was the first US race this year. We're also going to have one in Austin later this year. Yep. We've talked about this a few times. It really seems like F1 is gaining traction here. Drive to Survive on Netflix. People are really into it. I love that as just kind of evening crack a beer TV watching when nothing else is on or when I just want to watch it. I didn't go to this. I really wish I had. It would be on my list of ones to get to. I saw people compared it to almost a Super Bowl atmosphere. I thought they did a good job of capturing Formula One in the United States with a Miami vibe. All the teal was great. Mercedes Petronas revealed their special edition watches, which were teal. Alpine showed up with one of their like European Alpine models. So, there was a lot of pomp and circumstance, and it was a cooler race. It was a new thing too, Yeah,
it's America's answer to Monaco.
That is an awesome way to put it. Although we have Vegas coming up, I think, in 23. So, wow. But those are good settings for cities like this, especially in the United States.
I was laughing so hard at Lewis Hamilton, in the press conference with all his watches, and his rings. That was great.
He was
protesting the jewelry ban. The enforcement of the jewelry ban.
Yeah, what are you doing, Formula One? Why are you that's almost like the NFL, where they're you have to wear your socks at a certain length or you get a uniform penalty. Come on, don't do that, especially in Miami when you're trying to get good positive buzz in the US.
I understand that, in some sports, wearing jewelry is a safety issue. But, this isn't a contact sport.
Yeah.
And they're already allowed to wear wedding rings.
Right.
They want Lewis Hamilton to take his earrings out and his nose ring, which sounds like they're kind of, grown in there pretty permanently. Might be not real easy to take them out.
That's what he said. He's I can't take this thing out.
Yeah. And I don't know, if you have a wedding ring, depending on what it's made of, that's a far, far worse safety problem. If you break your finger and it starts to swell, if you're wearing titanium, you might have to get your finger amputated if you can't cut through that metal quickly. So I don't know. I think I've just sort of sat back and laughed at the issue just because it's pretty funny. But after thinking about it some more, I'm sort of landing on Lewis Hamilton's side with this. I can understand maybe not allowing necklaces or something that could get caught, if you were in a crash and choke you or tear off a limb or something. But something like an earring or, a nose stud is, especially, it's not going to hurt anyone. And he's been wearing it forever already. I don't see the problem.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with Lewis Hamilton. I mean, he's one of the greatest drivers of all time. If that's what he wants to do, like I think Formula One should just shut up, right? Or just go back to not enforcing it. Like leave it on the rule books, but don't make a thing out of it. Yeah, overall cool race though. I mean, F1 has a lot of momentum. There is people are getting into it in the United States. Like a lot of people are talking about it. It's like one of those things where it's not just like the car journalist group anymore. It's like people in my like broader circle of friends like are asking me about it. It's coming up in like things I listen to, like other shows, podcasts. Like Formula One is just like, it's definitely broader than I remember when I was essentially the weekend like motorsports editor at Auto Week when I first started out back in '08. And I would be like editing these stories like in the pre-dawn hours of like the summer and fall of like, I remember '08 because it's European, 6 hours ahead. I remember thinking, like I liked it back then, but I was not really that into it. I kind of grew into it using that as like a springboard. But like nobody cared about F1 back then. It was like, there was not a US Grand Prix. There hadn't been for a few years. Nobody knew who the drivers were. So it's just, to me, it is, a much different situation now. And I think that's cool.
Yeah. I used to follow it more closely. I used to even play Fantasy F1, which was cool. Really, really fun.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. I think the platform that I used has either changed dramatically or no longer exists. But I'm sure there are others. There's probably a Yahoo one.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
I know they've got other racing series, other fantasy racing series. But now seems like a good time to sort of get back into it. My son loved watching it when he was little. He was just obsessed with cars. Would watch, he would sit there and watch the whole race with me and just say "vroom" over and over. It was great. But then he got into dinosaurs and
dinosaurs trump everything.
And my time started being less and less free. But now would be a good time to sort of get back into it because it is sort of re-emerging as a popular spectator sport for Americans, and I could enjoy it with my peers again, other than beyond just my colleagues.
Yeah, exactly. I actually like the early starts again. Going back to cutting the grass early. It's like if you're up early with your your preschooler, well, hey, maybe he's watching dinosaurs and you can have like F1 qualifying streaming on your phone from Imola because it's, 1:30 there and, 7:30 or what here. So, we'll see. And they've added some wrinkles too, like Imola. That was one they brought back after not having raced there. So the last couple of years have been interesting. I think it helped too, like with the pandemic with sports. Like baseball had a very screwed up 2020 season. The NBA, the NHL had issues. The NFL just powered through, which, had some challenges with that too. But I mean, it was a sport that sort of, they had abbreviated 20 season. 21 was interesting. 22 has been pretty good. And they've sort of found a way to create this experience that I think people have sort of, there's been an opportunity and people have really found a way to get into it. So, yeah. Wow. A very gorgeous blue jay just flew into my yard. That was pretty awesome.
Oh, I love all the birds this time of year.
It's a good time of year. I asked Road Test editor Zach Palmer this last week, but what spring beers are you drinking?
There's been a couple from Vivant I've been drinking. There's one that's I forget exactly. It's a sour, but with apple and cranberry. It was actually really good. Yeah, and then I forgot the name of the brewery. It's some place from Chicago, but they had a really nice sort of this sort of German lager style.
Sounds good.
I really liked. I have to go dig through my fridge. And then there's a brewery in Ann Arbor called Holmes, like HOMES, like the acronym for the Great Lakes. And they do a lot of really good sours and like hazy IPAs. And so whenever I'm over on that side of town, I get like a little 750 milliliter bottle pour to bring home and enjoy. And then there's there's another Ann Arbor brewery called Mothfire.
Okay.
That everything I've had from there has been just excellent, from their sours to their stouts. They're a really small operation, but they're super good. They're super cool.
It's funny, Zach actually referenced Holmes Brewery as well. So I guess I don't know if you guys look at the sponsor of the podcast. Hey, we take them all. We actually did a podcast from Griffin Claw in Birmingham.
Yeah, I remember that.
A few years ago. I think it was more of a video thing, but hey, that was pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah, I cut the grass, and then I had a Coors Light, which I would say is hardly anybody's, premium lager or anything. Let's put it that way.
It tastes like cornflakes to me, which well, it sort of has like a nostalgic. It tickles some sort of part of my brain that remembers, when I first had beer and with all that corn sugar in it, and just sort of has that great or driving through Milwaukee. The smell of driving through Milwaukee reminds me of that too, even though it's from Colorado. But yeah.
Sounds good. All right. If you have any spring beer recommendations, hey, drop them in the comments or send an email to us. Also, you should probably send us your Spend My Monies. I think we've burned through most of ours. We have a few updates that we'll try to get to in the coming weeks. But if you have a question, great time to get it in there right now.
Yeah.
Podcast at autoblog.com. If you enjoy the show, that's 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, because we are everywhere. Be safe out there. Enjoy the rest of spring.